that are in Project Aware groupings or anybody?
It cut out on me while you were talking, Dave, but I think you were asking if it's available for the general public, and it's available to everybody.
If they could, it could be searched, essentially. We will send the link out so it's more easily found, but yes, it is on a site that someone could find it.
But again, I work for DMH and I did not know we had this channel, so it's not really very well known. Okay. Thank you guys for joining us today, making time in your schedules to come together. Excuse me. So this, today's office hours were our content area was going to focus on introducing a couple of our partnering organizations. There are 5 of them all together. And so for the next few office hours, we're going to have a couple come in and introduce themselves to you and talk about what their scope is and what they have to offer to your work in Project Aware. And then after that happens, after they've sort of introduced themselves to you, they're going to be able to contact your TA, your assigned TA, and start working on figuring out when to come to one of your district community leadership meetings or your Project Aware meetings, whatever you're calling them, and talk more specifically about your region, what you all have going on, kind of think about the data sources that might speak to the work that they do, and helping you all kind of think about their work in your implementation plan. So before we start on the content, I just wanted to see if there's anybody, any state team folks who have any updates or anything else that we need to relay. Okay. So I just wanted to be clear about that order, that sort of process, because I think we've gone back and forth, and I believe that I have said multiple things about who the partners will start to contact, whether they'll immediately just contact the coordinators in charge. I think I just got off the phone with our TAs, and I think what we decided was it would be easiest if Dave and Lindsay, if your teams, if your partners would contact the TA directly, who is assigned to each of the 3 regions, and I'll give you their names and their contact information, and that'll be true of all of the partners as they roll out. Any on that?
That's just for the initial outreach and kind of planning, but eventually it'll, but it doesn't always have to go through that way. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
I think just everybody's in such different places, and it would feel really kind of scattered to have people reaching out to the different regions when they're, maybe still in the middle of forming their district community leadership team, or still trying to understand sort of the basic foundational pieces. So having that one sort of person to contact and figure out what is the best plan for getting you all in there seems like the best way to go. Okay, so with that, today we have Dave Melnick from NFI, from Northeast Family Institute, coming to talk about trauma transformation in schools, transforming trauma in schools, and we have Lindsay from Up for Learning coming to talk about student voice and what Up for Learning has to offer as well. So, Dave, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I don't know everybody. we do which is, it's
Let's
nice
do
to see.
introductions.
Yeah.
Okay, here I'll start. I'm Mariana Donnelly. I am from the Department of Mental Health. I am coordinating Project Aware currently. We are in the process of hiring a coordinator who I will oversee. Excuse me. And allow me to sort of coordinate school mental health a little bit more and not be so deeply weighed with all the Project Aware duties. So we will also introduce that person once they come on board. Laurel, you want to jump in?
Sure. Let me just ask Dave, do you want to do this verbally or we could have people do it in the chat just for time's sake? I want to make sure we get to content and questions too. I
Yeah,
want you to know who you're talking to, but
but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know a lot of that.
yeah. Okay.
So
All right.
just-
Y'all know me, Laurel Onleon, Department of Mental Health, Director of the Children's Division. Thanks.
Nancy?
Hi all, Nancy Helen at the Agency of Education on the multi-tiered system of supports team.
Pat, you're next on my screen.
Hello, my name is Pat LeClaire. I'm a program director at Up for Learning, working with Lindsay.
Great, welcome. Brenda?
I'm Brenda Waterhouse. I'm principal at Berry City Elementary Middle School.
Thanks, Brenda. Lindsay?
Hey everyone, Lindsay Hallman, pronouns she, her, executive director at Up for Learning.
Thanks, Lindsay. Sean?
How you doing? My name is Sean McGinnis. I'm here representing Washington County Mental Health Services. I'm stepping in for Tiffany.
Great, thanks for coming, Sean. Dina?
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I have no camera today. I'm Dina Chase. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a senior program specialist at the Center for Health and Learning.
Thanks, Dina. Dave?
I'm Dave Melnick from NFI Vermont. I'm the director of the Transforming Trauma Collaborative.
Thanks, Dave. Des?
Hi, I'm Des Hertz. I'm the curriculum director at Caledonia Central Supervisory Union. I'm kind of representing our team. Our MTSS coordinator starting July 1st is Martha Demers. And she will be probably, yeah, yay, your connection point for Project Aware.
Awesome, that's very exciting. Karen?
I think I might be the only Karen on this. Sorry, I just got here. I was between buildings. Couldn't get my MacGyver workaround to work. So I'm just hopping in. Are we introducing ourselves?
Yeah, just a quick introduction.
Okay, Karen Fredericks. I'm the curriculum director in Barry.
Thanks, Karen. Kim?
Hi, sorry. I'm Kim Asom. I am working with Sherry Schoenberg as a part of the BEST team to provide technical assistance to the implementation and installation of the grant. And I will be providing support primarily to CCSU as well as some project support around this grant, as Sherry and I were both involved in it in the last iteration.
Thanks, Kim. Lindsay Heller.
I'm Lindsay Heller with the the SVSU. I'm the coordinator down here.
Thanks, Lindsay. And Sherry.
Hi, all. I'm Sherry Schoenberg, and I work with Kim and Cassandra and the others on the BEST project to support Project Aware, in particular support for the Barry district. Excuse me, Barry UUSD.
Thanks, Sherry. And then, Tom, you just hopped in. We're just giving a quick introduction. Oh, you're muted.
Thanks. I major computer issues this morning, but I'm back online. So Tom Ferris, I'm with the Agency of Education, the Vermont MTSS team.
And Danielle, did I give you?
Nope, that's okay. I'm Danielle Mitchell. I'm the Children's Director out of Washington County Mental Health Services.
Great. I started to go by squares, and then Laurel reminded me I've got to go by the list because it gets people hop in and out. And I really tricked myself. Is there anybody else that I forgot?
Ken just jumped on.
Ken just jumped on. Is that what you said?
Yep, Ken, you're muted.
You're muted. Well, he's
I can
doing
see if
that.
I
I'm
can-
Cassandra Townsend, co-director of the BEST project. Great to see all of you.
Thanks, Cassandra.
I can
Ken,
introduce Ken.
Yeah.
Ken, I'll introduce Ken. I could read his lips. Ken Cranberg works with the BEST project as well. And for this project, he is a TA provider for Project Aware for Southwest Vermont Supervisory Union.
Thank you. Well done.
And UCS.
You're hired. Great. Thanks so much. Hopefully I didn't miss anybody else. It also looks like when people hop on, they hop on in alphabetical order on the list. So it doesn't necessarily let you know. Can't really go in order. Okay, so for folks who just came on, we're starting our introductions of our partner organizations. We have Dave Melnick here from NFI to talk about transforming trauma in schools. And then we have Lindsay Hallman from Up for Learning, as well as Pat, to give us a little information around Up and Student Voice. So Dave, I'm gonna let you start us off, and then Lindsay and Pat can take over after, and then we'll do a bunch of question and answer just around Project Aware or the specific content, whatever's coming up for folks.
Great, thank you. Brief is not my strong suit, so I'm going to do my best here to be brief. It's good to see everybody. I'm excited about this project. I'm going to talk a little bit about transforming trauma. I'm going to very quickly describe a little bit about the difference between trauma informed and trauma transforming. Some people are aware of that, some people are not. We believe in our work that when you work in human services organizations like we all do, when you work with people, that there are three options that organizations have that work with people, that we recognize that automatically when you work with people, you work with trauma, that we are very much in our work focused on the best ways to work with people that have been harmed. And so we believe that there is a continuum of three options that any particular organization can find themselves in when you work in human services. I'll go from least preferred to most preferred. And if you imagine, I'm not going to show slides, but if you imagine a continuum going from left to right, that this continuum represents trauma inducing to trauma reducing options or aspirations. The three options that any of us have in our work in serving people and families, the least preferred is that you're trauma reactive. Basically, that's defined as there is sometimes indistinguishable qualities between the people providing the service and the people receiving the service, that we tend to take on the symptom patterns of the people that we work with that have been harmed, that there is no distinction and differentiation. Some people call that, secondary trauma, vicarious trauma. I think those are all relevant and appropriate terms. The middle level of the work, how we understand it, is being trauma informed. We believe, like I hope many of you believe, that being trauma informed is really good, yet it's not aspirational or the final destination that we're interested in. I won't define so much trauma informed because everybody knows for the most part, but mostly what I want to point out is that when we understand trauma informed, we understand that as a downstream, clinical driven, orientation that was developed largely by clinicians about 15 or so years ago, and that being trauma informed, as important as it is, it has one fatal flaw, which is that it really intends to help people after they've been harmed. While I don't think that I'll practice or live long enough to see us as a species evolve to where we're not harming each other. And so we're always going to need people, us, that are trauma informed as a clinical model to help people that have been harmed. That the primary difference between, in our view, being trauma informed and trauma transforming is that trauma transforming is an upstream initiative that is a combination of clinical, educational, and social justice model. And that being a social justice model is primarily interested in prevention of trauma and trauma being exposed, which means that taking true to spirit, the idea around trauma transformation is we take a really hard look at how is your organization, how is my organization contributing to and causing harm on the clients and students that we work with. So while we're aspirational in trying to stop trauma in every place that we possibly can stop trauma, the most immediate focus is how do we stop trauma in the places where we are primarily working? And that requires an examination, a really critical examination of our own practices. So there's a lot more about that. There's slides that we show around the difference between being trauma reactive, trauma informed, and trauma transforming. But we want to be clear from the outset that it is a combination of an educational, clinical, and most importantly, a social justice model, which means that it's steeped in values, and it means that it requires an acceptance that the work is inherently uncomfortable. We ask usually our partners at the beginning to at least consider that there are 3 commitments that we ask all of us to make in the work. And I'll just state what those are, and I'll say a little bit about each commitment. I'm not asking anybody to make a commitment today, but just for your consideration, here's what we generally talk about. Commitment number 1 in terms of aligning with trauma transformation is we ask people to consider to have the courage to see problems differently. That our experience is that some of the biggest problems in child serving agencies is the belief systems and assumptions of the adults that are in those systems providing the service. And so what we mean by seeing problems differently is that oftentimes what we're asking for consideration is to replace deficit-based descriptions of our students with asset-based ones. That fundamental to trauma transformation is a tireless effort to truly work through an asset lens and not a deficit lens. And that we believe that once you start talking about something like chronic behavior problem, that if a behavior problem in a student lasts too long, we stop believing that that's a behavior problem, and we think that that's an expression of chronic pain. And that we are interested in taking a deep dive into the chronic pain that our students experience in the realm of chronic relational, psychological, emotional pain. And that when we reframe chronic behavior problem as a chronic pain problem, we're actually then talking about what strategies and interventions do we need to adopt and align in our work to help manage that chronic pain that our students and their family and sometimes our workforce are experiencing. That we try to help people not talk about behavior problems. We help people talk about distress signals. That when a student is repeatedly cursing at adults, threatening other students, walking out of classroom, self-harming in the bathroom, taking substances before they come to school, illegal substances before they come to school, we see those as distress signals and SOS that requires by us as adults a safety signal response. And oftentimes it's our belief that the behavioral interventions that we come up with are not safety signals. Back to students, children, adolescents that are deeply, deeply distressed. So we'll talk a lot about managing pain. We often use language that's different than the language that people are familiar to use. The second commitment we ask people, so the first one is about a commitment to see problems differently. Second commitment is to see ourselves differently. And we speak a lot about 5 key practices that we believe transform trauma. One of those key practices is the absolute importance of reflective practice, is to make sure that we're integrating the capacity by which everybody on our workforce has as much knowledge about themselves as they have about students. In most schools that I find myself working with, that is not the current reality. That educational practice often emphasizes, and I believe overemphasizes, the amount of knowledge that we need to have about kids. And so I'm not here to say that we shouldn't have incredible knowledge about kids and their families, that we shouldn't have a deep understanding of psychological, emotional challenges and behavioral concerns. I think we need to. But I think what the balance that we're interested in is making sure that our workforce minimally has as much information and knowledge and are interrogating and analyzing and deconstructing their own behavior as much as they're analyzing and deconstructing and surveilling the behavior of students. And so again, I got a lot to talk about that. And when we talk about that, we use a motto under this second courage commitment, which is more mirrors and less lenses. That mirrors are tools that we use to understand ourselves better. Lenses are tools that we use to understand the outside world better. Both are important, but our experience is that schools currently prioritize lenses and rarely, if ever, really address the mirrors that are necessary to do excellent practice with kids. And then the final commitment is we ask people to consider committing to see interactions differently. So number one is seeing problems differently. Number two is seeing ourselves differently. And number three is seeing interactions differently. That for me as a clinical social worker, one of the first things I learned in graduate school about 40 years ago is that one of the lenses by which social workers understand the world is they see problems as something that exists between people, not within people. And that what we're trying to do is really trying to optimize how adults respond to the problematic behavior that they are charged to respond to. And while I'm at times deeply and greatly concerned about the things that our students do, I believe that we have the most control in schools and not what kids do, but what we do in response. And I believe that what separates good teaching from excellent teaching is excellent really resides in the way that our adults, our individual and collective adults, respond to some of the more pressing challenges of the day. So we look a lot at how we respond to problematic student behavior. And our focus really is about developing both the skills that are necessary for adults and to take a really careful look at culture. Because essentially, and then I'll stop, essentially what we believe trauma transformation is about changing culture. Only the parts of the current culture that the school and its partners deem to be problematic and concerning. So I'll stop there.
Thanks so much, Dave. I always think this is like, it's such a fascinating concept because we do really, it is, you know, teachers and school staff are often very empathetic folks, and that it's, you want to understand where a kid's coming from and the pain that they're trying to express to you, but it is really different to look at what their pain is actually doing to you and how you're reacting to it, and whether or not you're reacting the way that you intentionally want to, or if you're having your own sort of response to moments. So, and I know with my own kids and having worked in schools that would get triggered a lot, and it is really hard in the moment to be aware of that. So I really appreciate that perspective. Okay, I'm going to let Up for Learning give a little bit of their introduction, and then we could do some questions for Up for Learning and for Dave, and questions just about the grant in general. We have our TA here, we have state folks, so lots of support. So Lindsay and Pat, I'll give you the floor. Dave, did you have another thing you wanted to say? Okay.
No, thanks.
Would it be okay to share slides?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I think Teams will just let you do it as soon as I count on these things, but
Can't say that I'm like
sometimes
a
it's
really
risky.
great Teams person, but I'll give it a go. Let's see.
At the top next, oh, there you go.
You got it.
Oh, you're sharing us. You need to share a window.
Right. So you're sharing your screen rather than, yeah, you can pick a window if you want, or you can just close the things on your screen.
Hmm. Now I'm sharing myself. Let's see.
So hit
I've
stop
never seen
sharing.
that pop out of you. That's amazing.
I know this is a little strange. And it's how do I get rid of that? Stop sharing. Okay. Let me try one more time. Unless Pat, you're a Teams expert.
Lindsay, there's usually the screens that you have, but then there's another option of document or file, and you should be able to select the one you want. You got it.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you. Let me know if my things are moving kind of slow on my end. So let's see. Is that working for everyone?
Yep.
Yes.
Looks great.
Okay. Okay, well, I feel like thanks, Dave. It was really great to hear just Dave and up. We've been having lots of conversations and our work is I just feel like there's so much alignment. When you talk about this upstream initiative, I also believe that Up for Learning is so similar in the way that we do our work, and that we are steeped in our values, and that we're really working on changing culture. And it starts with first thinking about our mental models and the way in which we think about ourselves, our schools, our young people. So I'm Lindsay Hallman, Executive Director, Up for Learning. I'm here with Pat, who I really can't see right now, but that's okay. I'm just going to pretend that I can see you, Pat. So just chime in whenever. Pat is a Program Director at Up for Learning. And we'll go through this pretty quickly. That way there's time for questions. We are a nonprofit organization that we work both in Vermont and outside of Vermont. Our office is in Waterbury, but we work throughout the country. And we really think about our work in a why, what, how model. The why being that schools are typically historically have been done to and for young people. Young people are the consumers of their education. Therefore, they should be, schools should be a place where they are engaged in thinking about their own learning, their learning journey, their needs. And so we really believe in this model of youth adult partnership. That's our why, that youth and adults need to be sharing power of voice and responsibility in order to ensure that all young people are engaged, that all young people feel seen and valued, a sense of belonging. And then our what is really based on the needs of a community. So what is it that is your needs? What is your goal? And I know you all have been thinking about your needs assessments and your goals, and that's where then Up brings a model for helping you work to create change with youth and adults working side by side. And our how is through youth participatory action research, so using data to drive change and moving into action. Here's our vision. You can see, similar to what Dave said, I mean, we really believe that educational equity is a basic human right. So if that's the case, then we are centering equity and justice in all the work that we do. And we do that through sharing responsibility. That's that idea of youth and adults need to be equal partners in change. Just as Dave said, we take an assets-based approach. So starting with strengths, really lifting up what is it that youth and adults both bring to the table to create change? What are the strengths in the community? What are the strengths in the schools? Because when we take a deficit-based approach, we start really with no energy. So we really start always with lifting up strengths. We believe that in order to create change, you need to create open dialogue where we bring lots of different people together to think about what are the strengths, what are the issues and concerns, and how can we move forward towards solutions. And we do that by employing data to drive change. So using data as the way in which we can wrap our heads around what are both the strengths and the concerns in our community, and then how do we take action. We have a really short video, if that's okay. I can't see anyone, so if you could, is that okay if it's just like 3 minutes and then we'll briefly, like
Absolutely.
1 more minute? Okay,
Great.
this kind of gives you a sense of who we are.
Primary consumer of our educational system are young people, yet they're the folks that are least asked what they want in their educational experience.
Our mission is to empower youth and adults to transform schools together.
One word to describe is equality.
To me, it means dismantling systems of oppression and systemic racism.
We are decentering ourselves and prioritizing the community we're working with.
To create systemic change. So really with equity and justice at the core of that work.
Our goal is to change schools so they work for young people and adults.
Through youth-adult partnerships, students transform from being objects to being inventors.
Try to hold these spaces and hold conversations and ensure that it doesn't always have to be an adult in this role.
So really ensuring that all stakeholders, youth and adults, are heard and valued and respected in order to really make change in communities.
As a parent, you need to see how it came together to include the whole community.
You also support them in going through youth participatory action research.
Right. The process is about asking people questions, looking at what they're saying, what's important, what concerns them, what are they hopeful about. The goal is let's identify something we can change tomorrow or this month.
Let's take some action. A lot of what I've been doing this year as UP grows, we've been doing a lot of more personalized projects for schools. So helping plan full day retreats for them to plan, say, an assembly that the students are doing on microaggressions to their school.
Students involved in processes that impact students the most, and there's currently too much power in the hands of adults.
We will come into the school and facilitate discussions. So for some schools, we're looking at equity issues such as disparities in the discipline data.
So the first program that I began working with is called Cultivating Pathways to Sustainability. You're going to be leading conversations. You're going to be working with school teams around creating an action plan that is working towards the sustainable development goals in their own communities. But it's that action aspect of it. Of each school, you got to see a tangible project that came out of it by the end of the year.
Yeah, because if we want to make a significant change in the world, we got to start at a young age.
And UP really gives me the confidence to be like an intensive facilitator and to feel like I do have the power to make change and like my voice counts.
There's a little taste of Up for Learning, and oops, sorry. And there it is again. See if I can advance the slide. I'm gonna move forward. As Dave, there's so many like similarities in our work. So as Dave talked about, a continuum of around the trauma inducing to trauma reducing, we have a continuum as well around what it takes to move from youth as recipients to youth and adults as full partners. So that's really the why of our work, as I talked about in the beginning. And I'm not going to go into deep detail on that, but more to come. And when we thought about our role in Aware, we are really looking to think about how can we engage as many people in a region, in a community, a school community, K-12, including the families in the work that we do. And so we have had a lot of success with working with elementary schools, looking at their school climate data through personal power and community connections as they go through that YPAR cycle. And then also with our middle school and high schools, using the Youth Risk Behavior Survey as their focal point for getting to Y. all that together, we've also had a lot of success with then having in a community a youth and family engagement team where families and caregivers come together with the youth that are engaged in this work to really then think about kind of larger systemic change projects as well. So I can go into a lot more detail at some other point, but that's kind of what we are envisioning. But also we really are about co-creation and working with the different regions to think about what are your specific needs and how can we bring youth and adults together to create change, to have more engaged young people who care, who feel that they are cared for and valued in their communities. Pat, do you want to just give a little bit of an example?
Yeah, sure. And I think this is good to have this slide up of the our youth participatory action research cycle, or our YPAR trail map here, to understand how the work of a youth adult team in a school really functions throughout the year. So I'm thinking specifically of a school that I've been working with this school year, where they were starting with the P2C2 program, so personal power and community connections, an elementary school, and they coalesced as a team. And we've met, I think, 5 times now throughout the year in retreats, as well as support meetings with their teachers and the adults that are supporting the team in between those retreats. And what we do in those retreats is really kind of what you saw in the videos. They're very active and engaging retreats, aiming to be accessible to all students. So the team, the P2C2 team that I'm working with in Virgins, like, spent time at step number 1, building relationships. We take time every retreat to play games and connect as individuals. They spent time thinking about what are issues in their school community that have been coming up for them. How do their identities as students, as individuals, play into their perceptions of those issues? And then we spent time looking at data. So for them, it was their school SEL panorama data that they looked at. And through a number of facilitated activities, that data was the team was able to consider that data from a few different perspectives and in a way that was accessible to 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. And through that, they identified a couple of concerns that their team wanted to work on, about expressing how students are able to express their feelings, and also about how frequently students feel like they're disrespected by other students, or that they witness that sort of disrespectful behavior. And then what we've been doing since then is really thinking about, well, what can this team do to address some of those concerns? And to do that, it's really about sharing the data and having conversations around the data with a wider section of the school community. So that includes evening dialogue nights with their parents and caregivers, as part of the youth and family engagement team. And it includes sharing it back to the wider student community at the school as well, through activities that the team has led in their morning meetings. And all of that has led to the team identifying some action steps that they're planning on taking this spring and into next year as well. So that's a real quick drive through what this cycle can look like in action.
I think that we'll pause there. Thank you, Pat. So I think we've used our time.
Thank you guys so much. I could easily be a spokesperson for UP. I was working in the schools and had the opportunity to run the Getting to Why groups for our schools, not knowing what I was getting into or what this was about. And it was just so well organized and supported, and it was such a meaningful group. It was really incredible to watch these kids. You just like create a space for kids to really explore and understand these very adult concepts, and or what we think of as adult concepts, and give them the space, and they just really can revolutionize the work. It was remarkable to see. It was like one of my favorite things that I did in the schools. So I could sing these praises all day. So I think when your schools are ready to engage in this, you will really enjoy it and see a lot of benefits. Okay, so now I think if folks want, we can open it up to questions. We have about 15 minutes left, and we can do questions to both of these partnering organizations, or if you have questions for the state team or logistical stuff, we have your TA here. Anything that's coming up for folks. Best folks, before you got on, I did reiterate to everyone that the sort of order of operations for this, that we will introduce the partnering organizations 2 at a time for the next couple of weeks. And then once they are introduced, they will contact the TAs for each region. And so that's Sherry Schoenberg, Ken Cranberg, Rebecca Lallier, and Kim Asom. Sherry and Rebecca are sharing Barry because they're a larger region. So, and I will send you all that information to get in contact with those folks.
Marianne, if I can jump in while people are thinking about their questions, I just want to be really clear for the LEAs and DAs. The work of these partners in your regions is funded by the grant through DMH. It's not going to tap into your own LEA or DA grant agreements. So this is covered. And it's a great opportunity. It really does align with some of the goals that we have at the state level and also at the federal level around making sure the work is trauma informed, that there's student voice in here. So these, I hope, are great opportunities for you all to bring in. I know one of the not one, but I know some of the work in the prior aware schools from our last round really did value that student voice in a way that they hadn't been able to do it before. And this year we're bringing Dave in, who we hadn't tapped in our prior round. So really looking forward to both of these. So what questions do you have for them, for any of us?
This is Des. I don't have a question yet. I appreciate both of you sharing what you have to offer as far as resources. Just for clarity, I think we're at the beginning phases of figuring out what our plan will be as we roll forward with Project Aware, and I can see some other heads nodding as well in the room. So we're working on, we have got our goal, but we're working on our action steps and timeframes and logistics, and really thinking about what those next steps might be. So it's good to know that you're both available for resources as we plan forward. So thank you.
Des, I would encourage you and your team to think about having the conversations early with these folks, because it might help you in designing those action steps and thinking about kind of how could this fit in? How could this benefit some additional kind of assessment of what your current resources are and where you've done some of this work and where stepping off point with some of it? Something to think about.
So now I do have a question. So, and I apologize for any street noise. I had to open my window, but I'm right on Route 2. So For example, and maybe Kim, you can help with this question as well. We're just kind of getting started meeting and looking at our MOU with our partners, but could we pull into a future meeting Lindsay or Dave and ask them to kind of brainstorm ideas that would work towards our, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that's absolutely what we are envisioning. So in this beginning part, having these guys come in with their sort of content expertise and help you think about exactly that. Like, while you're looking at your data or while you're thinking about your programming that you've had available, they can sit and brainstorm with you and think about what are some other aspects of data, or what, how could we develop the program or expand the programming so that they're, reaching more schools or students. But yeah, sitting with you so that, and I know that now is the time where you all are really starting to plan a lot of stuff for next year. And so even if it's not really like super concrete and figured out, if that's part of your brainstorming process and having them available for that, you can start working on some of those logistics, or kind of keep a placeholder in your mind for having them come in at certain times.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that too. Like, that's really helpful to hear. And we really want to be able to, it's really helpful for us to be part of the brainstorming process, because that's what our model is about co-creation. We don't have a program that we just like plop into a space. It's really about co-creating. And I also think that because this is a multi-year grant, there's like, we can look at it in that, like, what happens in year 1 or 1.5 at 2, 3, 4, and think about how it ripples out over time. So where is there a real readiness in the regions, and to like maybe start, and then how do we then ripple out over time is kind of what, regardless of whether it's project aware or any of our work throughout the state, that's what we're always seeking, is where's the readiness to start, so we can start to build that capacity within a system. So we would love to be part of those brainstorming conversations.
What else is coming up for folks? I also know that we're in May now, and so it's, you're trying to wrap up the year while we're also asking you to think about, next year, which I know is already part of on your plate, but it's, we're really just really starting to roll this out and get some steam behind us, and it's time for you to wrap up the year. And so we want to be really supportive in that process and help you in that, but also, help you get ready for next year so we can keep that momentum moving. And there's always too much to do and not enough time. So we really want to honor that. Kim, I see your hand.
Thanks. I think I'm mostly echoing what you're saying, Marian. I want to name that I think the silence is about so much information being presented, so much to absorb, maybe some excitement and not quite sure what to do with that and how to tap into the resources that you've identified for folks. So I think it is the end of the year, and also just like, wow, I'm taking in a lot of information now. There's a lot of potential opportunity, and how do I avail, not individuals, but how does the SUSD avail themselves to really make some transformational changes and system changes?
Yeah, and many of these BCLTs were the aware teams, your DA and your local mental health agency and your SU are just sort of starting to figure out how to get to the table or when to schedule these meetings. There's just so many logistical pieces right now that everybody's still trying to work out and is in very different spots for, and that is okay. And I think that I do think that having these folks come is a really great opportunity, and you don't have to be at the perfect space and time to have them come in and sort of just help with their piece of the. Lindsay, I see your hand. You're muted, Lindsay.
Someday I'll get it all right. I just wanted to echo what Kim said and really agree with that it's just so much to take in. Ken and I had talked about this last week, but he was saying that schools are developing like their professional development calendars now, and that I should be, looking to see if we can potentially get into those calendars through these different resources that you guys are providing through Aware. So I know I have a meeting this week with the curriculum director to potentially get on that calendar, but really that's all I have. And I know I need to bring information about these different organizations that work with Aware. So, I'll bring the information that was shared, but I think it's going to be needing to collect more information and really align our goals that I'm just learning about with what these organizations have to share. So I'm thankful for the information, but I think I'll be reaching out at a later time to really get and gather that much more information. So I appreciate this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Lindsay, I also think that if your curriculum director at some point could be invited to your Aware meeting and have them hear directly from these partners and think about, even just having that placeholder like I talked about and just saying, okay, well, we'll have some whatever we determine is the first step for Aware TA training, we'll have that happen, at this time, and then we'll determine where it makes sense for which direction it makes sense for us to start in. But yeah, that could be a conversation altogether. So it's not just you trying to relay all of this to another person. It's hard. We have about 3 minutes left. Any other burning thoughts or questions? Oh, thanks, Lindsay. Just put the slides in the chat, so you all have access to that.
Who's on next?
Good question. I have to look. Let's see. So Center for Health and Learning is going to come next week and talk about suicide prevention and You Matter. And then Outright Vermont is going to come and talk about creating affirming environments for LGBTQ youth. And it'll be the same sort of format. We'll let them do a little presentation, just sort of an overall view of what they can provide, and then in their scope of work, and then we'll do some Q&A afterwards. And again, then they will contact your TA provider and figure out when it makes sense and how to come and meet with the regions. Okay, if I don't see any other questions or comments, then I think I can let you all go and have a very quick break before your next meeting.
Thanks,
all right,
Mariana.
thank you all so much.
Thank you, Mariana.
Yeah, absolutely.